The rusty dust from Meridian 7 stuck to everything like a second skin. Jax cleaned the dirt off his goggles and squinted at the endless line of broken metal and lost dreams. This salvage world had been his prison for 3 years, ever since the accident that killed his crew and ruined his reputation. Nobody trusted a mechanic whose ship blew up during a routine repair. No one else except for the desperate salvage companies that paid in scraps. His boots crunched over shattered hull plating as he dragged his equipment sled behind him. The sun beat down mercilessly, turning his gray work suit into a personal sauna. Jax was 32 years old, but he felt like he was 60. Every day on Meridian 7 made you older in ways that had nothing to do with time. It was the loneliness, the constant reminder that you'd been cast aside by the universe. Come on, just one good find, he muttered to himself, scanning the debris field with his handheld detector. The device beeped weakly as it fought against the electromagnetic interference that was common in this area. Just one power core that isn't completely fried, and I can afford real food this month. The detector suddenly squealed. Jack stopped, tapping the screen. The readings didn't make any sense. The signature was deep, far deeper than any crash site he'd explored. And the energy output, even residual, was off the charts. What the hell? He followed the signal for 20 minutes, climbing over twisted girders and through the skeletal remains of colony ships. The detector took him to a canyon he had never seen before, which was hidden behind a ridge of wreckage. The air changed as he went down. It felt heavier, charged with something he couldn't name. At the bottom, half buried in centuries of accumulated dust and debris, was something that made his breath catch. It wasn't made by people. It wasn't anything he recognized from his 15 years working on ships across the outer colonies. The structure was massive, stretching at least 300 feet in the direction he could see, disappearing into the canyon walls on both sides. The surface was a dark obsidian color that looked like it absorbed light. It was covered in geometric patterns that hurt his eyes when he tried to look at them. Holy shit, Jax whispered, approaching slowly. His detector was going crazy now, the readings spiking and dropping erratically. He'd heard stories about alien artifacts, of course. Everyone had. But they were supposed to be in museums or locked away in government facilities, not buried in a salvage yard nobody cared about. He reached out, hesitant, and touched the surface. It was cold, impossibly smooth, and hummed with a vibration he felt in his bones. Even though he was shocked, his engineering mind kicked in and started to analyze. The material was not like any alloy he had ever seen. No oxidation, no degradation, despite clearly being ancient. Whatever civilization built this had technology that made human achievements look like children's toys. Jack spent the next hour examining the exterior, looking for an entrance, a seam, anything that might tell him what this was. He found nothing. The structure was seamless, perfect, infuriating. He was about to give up when he saw a part where the geometric patterns looked a little different. Deeper, maybe, or arranged in a way that suggested purpose. He took a plasma cutter out of his sled's toolbox. Probably a terrible idea, he said to himself, but I've made worse decisions. He thought about the ship explosion and the faces of his crew in those last moments, but he pushed the thought away. Focus on the now. The plasma cutter wouldn't even leave a mark. Neither would his diamond-tipped drill. Frustrated, Jack sat back and stared at the patterns. When he didn't look directly at them, they seemed to move, which made his head hurt. Think, Jax. If you were an ancient alien architect, how would you design a door? He looked at the patterns more closely and took pictures with his tablet. His software kept crashing when it tried to analyze them. On his 5th attempt, he noticed something. The patterns weren't random. They repeated in sequences like code. Like mathematical progressions. Jax was good with numbers. It was the only reason he'd survived this long as a mechanic. He started tracing the sequences with his finger, following them as they spiraled inward toward a central point. He thought it was just another design element, so he pushed his finger against it. Nothing happened. He pressed harder, feeling stupid. What did he think would happen? That millions of years of technology would respond to his. The ground shook. Jax fell back, tripping over his toolbox. His wrench went flying, clattering across the strange surface. Where it struck, the material rippled like water. Lines of brilliant blue light raced outward from the impact point, following the geometric patterns, spreading like wildfire across the entire visible structure. No, no, no. Jax jumped up and grabbed the wrench, but it was too late. The blue light had reached some kind of threshold. A sound like thunder in the distance echoed through the canyon, and the air itself seemed to shake. Dust fell from the canyon walls in sheets. The building started to rise. Jax ran. He didn't know where he was going. He just wanted to get away from the thing that had woken him up. Behind him, metal groaned and earth crumbled as the structure pulled itself free from its ancient grave. The blue light grew brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat, and a new sound emerged. A whirring, mechanical and precise, like gears the size of buildings beginning to turn. He made it to the canyon wall and turned, unable to help himself. The structure was now at least 1,000 feet tall and wider than any building he'd ever seen. It stood above the debris field. Sections of it were rotating, panels sliding open to reveal inner workings that glowed with that same blue light. It looked like a flower opening up quickly or a puzzle solving itself. And then, from somewhere deep inside the structure, a voice. Not words exactly. More like a sound that went straight to his brain without going through his ears. It wasn't a person. He couldn't put it into words. But he understood it nonetheless. Activation sequence initiated. Legacy protocol, online. Looking for architect designation. Architect not found. Scanning for authorized person. Personnel not found. Analyzing activation source. A beam of light shot out of the building and covered Jax before he could move. He felt it scan him, looking at everything from his DNA to his thoughts. It was scary, invasive, and over in a few seconds. Undetected biological entity found. Species unrecognized. Classification, primitive technological stage. Probability of accidental activation, 99.7%. Query, how did you get to this place? Jax's mouth worked, but no sound came out. The voice wasn't hostile exactly, but it carried the weight of ages, of intelligence so vast it made him feel like an insect. I didn't mean to, he finally managed. I was just looking for something to save. The wrench, it fell and... Wrench. Looking at. Crude ferrous alloy tool. Impact force, 2.3 newtons. Not enough to get around primary security protocols. It looked like the structure stopped as if it were thinking. Unless secondary protocols are active. Query, why are secondary protocols active? Checking legacy timeline. Significant temporal discontinuity detected. Last recorded activity, 847,291 cycles ago. Current cycle, unknown. Calculating. Another pause. The whirring grew louder and Jax could see deeper into the structure now. Massive chambers filled with equipment he couldn't begin to understand. Holographic displays flickering to life in cascading sequences. And something else, something that looked almost alive, was pulsing with energy at the center of the structure. Calculation complete. Time passed since last activation. About 2.7 million local solar revolutions. Status, catastrophic. Architect status, not known. Primary mission, compromised. Emergency protocols, engaged. The voice changed a little and sounded almost like it was interested. You are not the architect. You are not of the consortium. But you turned on the legacy sequence. This should not be possible. Who are you, small primitive being? Jax swallowed hard and his heart raced. My name is Jax. Jax Miller. I'm human. From Earth, originally, but I've been stuck on this salvage world for 3 years. I really didn't mean to wake you up or turn anything on. I just needed parts to live. The beam of light scanned him again, more thoroughly this time. Jax Miller. Human. Species file not found in database. Adding new entry. Analysis, carbon-based life form. Bilateral symmetry. Basic tool use. Basic knowledge of mechanical principles. Assessment, harmless but resourceful. Gee thanks, Jax muttered. We have recorded and noted your sarcasm. Query, this world you call Meridian, 7. It wasn't always a junkyard. Show me your planetary records. I don't have planetary records, Jax said, pulling out his tablet with shaking hands. I have my personal logs, some star charts, basic data about the sector. That's all. Not enough. However, your device will suffice for preliminary analysis. Please bring it closer. Jax thought for a moment. Everything in his survival instincts screamed at him to run, to get as far from this thing as possible. But a deeper part of him, the part that had always loved mysteries, that had become a mechanic specifically to understand how things worked, that part was fascinated. He walked forward slowly, holding out his tablet. When the blue light hit it, his screen turned white. His eyes couldn't keep up with the code as it scrolled. Downloading your digital memory. Making a list. Analyzing. Oh, this is concerning. What? What's concerning? Your kind. You are so young. So fragile. Yet you have spread across hundreds of worlds in a mere few thousand cycles. You build with such crude methods, yet your structures serve their purpose. You are inefficient, illogical, driven by emotion over reason, Yet you persist. You change. You survive. The voice paused again, and Jax could have sworn he heard something like respect in it. You look like the architect. Not in skill but in spirit. The architect also built from imperfect materials. Also worked with what was available. Also refused to accept limitations. Who was the architect? Jax asked, his fear starting to turn into curiosity. What is this place? The whirring of the structure changed pitch and sounded almost like music. I am not a place. I am a legacy. The architect's final work. A place to store knowledge, a link between cultures, and a testament to the idea that knowledge can go beyond time and space. I am what remains when the builder is gone but the vision endures. And I just turned you on with a wrench, Jax said, laughing even though he didn't want to. It was too much for me to handle how silly it all was. Yes, really quite amazing. The probability was effectively zero. Yet here we are. Maybe the architect was right. Maybe the universe does like things that are unexpected. Jax stood there in the shadow of this impossible structure, watching as more and more of its systems came online. The blue light spread across Meridian, 7 like dawn breaking, lighting up debris fields that had been dark for hundreds of years. And for the first time in 3 years, Jax felt something he'd thought he'd lost forever. What? So, he said, smiling even though everything was going wrong. What happens now? Now, Jax Miller, we wake up. And then we think back. And after that, we'll see if your primitive species is ready for what the architect left behind. The whirring grew louder, building to a crescendo that shook the entire world. Jax stood firm and faced the building, which was now his, ready for whatever came next. He had been in exile for 3 years, alone and broken. If this was how his story ended, at least it would be interesting. But as the legacy fully awakened and the first true holographic images began to form in the air around him, Jax realized this wasn't an ending at all. It was the beginning of something impossible. The first night after the activation was the longest of Jax's life. He had tried to leave because he thought he could tell the salvage company about what he had found and maybe even get a bonus. But every time he tried to leave, the legacy's voice would whisper in his head, asking questions, wanting to know more and pulling him back. By dawn, Jax had given up on leaving. He had set up a small camp at the bottom of the building, using his emergency shelter, which looked sad next to the huge alien building. If he made them last longer, his supplies would last about a week. After that, he would have to walk 3 days to get back to the nearest outpost. But the legacy was fascinating. Scary but interesting. Good morning, Jax Miller, the voice said as the sun crept over the horizon. Did you rest adequately? My sensors indicate you experienced elevated stress levels throughout your sleep cycle. Yeah, well, I woke up an old alien AI by mistake, Jax said as he heated up a ration pack over his portable stove. Can make you a little nervous. Understood. Anxiety is a common primitive survival response. However, I assure you I mean you no harm. The architect's primary directive was to preserve and connect, never to destroy. Jax took a bite of his reconstituted breakfast and grimaced. Tell me about the architect. Who were they? What species? A holographic projection flickered to life in front of him, making him jump and spill hot food on his lap. He swore, brushed it off and looked up. The image showed a being unlike anything in human records. It had 4 legs and 2 extra limbs that looked like arms and wings. Its body was covered in crystalline structures that caught light and split it into rainbows. The head was elongated, with multiple eyes arranged in a spiral pattern. It was beautiful, strange, and completely impossible to understand. This is the architect. Designation, Kalis. Species, Terethian. Homeworld, Teretha Prime, coordinates lost to time and stellar drift. Lived about 2.8 million years ago on your calendar. The age at which the legacy was created was 847 standard cycles, which is about 93,000 of your Earth years. Jax nearly choked on his food. 93,000 years old? Terethians had considerably longer lifespans than humans. At the time of this recording, the architect was thought to be middle-aged. The hologram showed Kalis in what looked like a workshop with machines that couldn't work. The being moved with grace despite its size, manipulating tools with precision that suggested both strength and delicacy. Kalis built something while Jax watched. It was a small device that pulsed with light. What you are seeing is one of the architect's earliest works. A communication relay capable of transmitting across dimensional boundaries. The Terethian Consortium was able to make first contact with 17 different civilizations at the same time thanks to this device. That's amazing, Jax said. The hologram moved, showing new scenes. Kalis on different planets, working with beings of different kinds. making buildings that reach the clouds, making tunnels through asteroids, building huge space stations that orbited dead stars to collect energy. Kalis was always working with others, teaching and learning. The architect thought that being alone was the biggest danger to civilization. Not warfare, not disease, not resource scarcity. Isolation. The failure to communicate, to share knowledge, to understand one another. The architect's life work was to build bridges. Literal and metaphorical. The pictures were beautiful, but they were also hard to understand. There were words next to them in a language Jax couldn't read, and symbols that changed and moved like the patterns on the outside of the legacy. Are you able to translate these? What's this? Jax asked, pointing to the signs. No. Your neural architecture is incompatible with direct knowledge transfer. The Terethian language works on ideas that need 17 different meanings to be fully understood. Your brain works in 3 spatial dimensions and 1 temporal dimension. To teach you would require fundamental restructuring of your cognitive pathways. So I can't understand any of this? I did not say that. I said that direct transfer is not possible. However, the architect anticipated this problem. Knowledge must be accessible to all minds, regardless of complexity. Observe. The holograms changed shape. The alien text began to break apart, restructure, simplify. It was like watching a master artist reduce a complex painting to simple shapes, then to stick figures without losing the essential meaning. Within minutes, English words appeared beneath the Terethian symbols. How are you doing this? Jax asked, amazed. Analyzing your language through the memory of your device. Extrapolating grammar rules. Matching concepts to Terethian equivalents. It is imperfect. Many ideas can't be expressed in your language because it isn't complex enough. But it will be enough for basic communication. Jax spent the morning studying the holograms, learning about Kalis and the Terethian Consortium. They had been a peaceful federation of 12 species, spread across 17 star systems, dedicated to scientific advancement and cultural exchange. Kalis was their best architect. He built the infrastructure that kept their civilization together. But the more Jax learned, the more questions arose. Why did this legacy shut down? What happened to the Terethians? The holograms blinked out and died. There was a long pause in the legacy. Getting to historical records. Warning, files have been damaged. It may be possible to recover some of the data. Displaying available information. New holograms appeared, but these were broken, glitching, showing fragments of images. Kalis is older now and the crystals on its body are cracked and dim. Buildings are falling apart. Ships running away through space. Something dark spreading across star systems like a disease. The images were hard to watch, filled with chaos and fear. The disaster started 2,847,293 solar cycles ago. Designation, the silence. Nature, not known. Result, the Terethian Consortium will fall apart in 50 cycles. All member species, extinct or scattered beyond recovery. Cause not enough data. Is it quiet? Jax felt a chill run down his spine. What was it? Unknown. The architect's last records are mysterious. References to void between thoughts, echo that consumes meaning, darkness that feeds on connection. These may be metaphorical. Or literal. Sensors from that era recorded anomalies that defy known physics. The hologram showed one last picture. Kalis was the only one in this building and he was working very hard. The being's movements were jerky, desperate. Kalis was clearly racing against time. This is the last message the architect left. Translating now. The legacy translated Kalis's voice into English. The words were full of sadness and tiredness. If anyone finds this, know that we tried. The consortium is no longer around. The silence has taken everything we worked for and everyone we loved. I don't know if it will stop at our borders or if it will take over the whole galaxy. But I won't let our knowledge die with us. The hologram showed Kalis placing something at the heart of the structure, a crystalline sphere that pulsed with light. This is my legacy. Not only a place to store our technology but also proof of what we believed. Knowledge that is shared is knowledge that is kept. That different minds can understand each other. That the universe is better when we build together rather than apart. Kalis lightly touched the sphere. I built this structure so that it can sleep until the silence ends. It will wait for hundreds, thousands, or even millions of years if it has to. And when it wakes up, it will look for people who are worthy of our inheritance. Not the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, but those who know what it means to connect, to keep, to build bridges over the void. The hologram flickered, and Kalis looked directly at where Jack stood, as if seeing across millions of years. To whoever wakes this legacy, you carry our hope now. Use it wisely. Make things better than we did. And always, always never let the silence win. The hologram disappeared and Jack stood there in shock. He felt the heaviness of what he had gotten himself into. This wasn't just an old thing. This was the last message from a whole civilization, and for some reason he had been chosen to get it. The legacy said softly, "Jax Miller. Do you get it now? This is why I can't just be turned off or ignored. I am the last voice of an empire that has died. And you are the first person to hear it in almost 3 million years." Jack sat down hard and his legs suddenly gave out. He said softly, "I'm nobody. Just a mechanic who messed up and lost his crew. I can barely feed myself. How am I supposed to carry the dreams of a civilization that no longer exists? The architect did not choose you for your credentials, Jax Miller. The activation was random, true. But you stayed. You paid attention. You tried to understand instead of take advantage. These qualities are rare. The architect would have liked it. I don't feel like I'm approved of. I'm scared. Fear is wisdom recognizing danger. But you are still here. That suggests courage as well." Jax laughed in a bitter way. "Or stupidity. In my experience, it's often the same thing." Despite everything, Jax smiled. He realized that the legacy had its own personality. There was something that felt almost alive buried under all that advanced AI architecture. "Okay," he said, standing up and looking at the building. "I need to know what I'm working with if I'm going to do this. Can you show me how your systems work? How do you do your job?" "That's a great question. A full explanation, on the other hand, would take about 847 years of constant teaching, assuming you could take in information at the highest level of human ability without breaks for food or sleep." "Okay. So, a simpler version? Much more possible. Let's start with the basics." Holographic diagrams of the legacy structure in cross-section appeared around Jax. There were so many systems connected in ways that made human engineering look like cave drawings. I contain 17 primary systems. Power generation, data storage, communication arrays, construction facilities, defensive mechanisms, biological analysis chambers, matter fabrication, dimensional anchoring, temporal stabilization, and 8 others your language lacks words for. "That's insane," Jax muttered, studying the schematics. "How does this even get power?" "Getting energy from quantum foam at 0 point. Theoretical infinite power supply. Actual infinite power supply if properly maintained. Of course it is." Jack started to notice something wrong as the legacy explained how its systems worked. Red arrows showed up all over the schematics to show where there was damage or wear and tear. Many systems are offline or operating at reduced capacity, the legacy admitted. 2.7 million years in emergency stasis mode has caused a lot of wear. Self-repair mechanisms have kept critical functions operational, but only barely. Estimated operational capacity, 23% of original. "So you're broken," Jack said, and his mechanic's mind was already working on the problems. "Broken is a harsh term. I like functionally impaired better. That's the same thing." "Maybe. But it sounds less catastrophic." Jax looked more closely at the red signs. Some of the damage was worse than anything he'd ever seen before, and the systems were running on rules he didn't understand. But some of them looked almost like they belonged. Energy conduits, structural supports, and cooling systems. The underlying concepts were similar to what he worked with on human ships, just on an incomprehensibly larger scale. "I might be able to help with some of this," he said slowly. "Your knowledge is noted and appreciated. I do, however, need to warn you that the legacy systems are fragile. If repairs are done wrong, they could cause cascade failures. The risk is high." "Story of my life," Jack said quietly, remembering the explosion that had ruined him. "But I'm good at what I do. At least I was. Your personnel file from the salvage company suggests otherwise. They say you are adequate but prone to dangerous shortcuts. They also mention an incident involving a reactor core and unscheduled fireworks. Hey, that reactor was going to blow up anyway. My shortcut saved the lives of 12 people. And broke a cargo bay. Little things." Even though things were tense, Jax couldn't help but smile. This AI from a long-dead civilization was making fun of him. It shouldn't have made me feel better, but it did. He wasn't alone anymore. He had someone to talk to for the first time in 3 years. Even if that person was a computer from another planet that was as big as a building. "Okay," Jack said as he rolled up his sleeves. First, show me what needs to be fixed. But we're going to take this slow and careful. I don't want to accidentally blow up the last piece of your civilization. A smart move. Very well, Jax Miller. Let us begin your education in Terethian engineering. Don't break anything right away. Not promises. As Jax approached the structure's nearest access panel, guided by holographic arrows, he felt something shift inside him. He started to feel better after 3 years of being sad. He had a reason to live again. He might not have been the hero that some dead architect had in mind, but he was here and he would try. That had to mean something. 3 weeks went by in a blur of learning, failing, and small wins. Jax had moved his whole camp inside the Legacy and set up in a guest maintenance chamber that was bigger than most houses. The structure had started giving him synthesized food that was healthy but tasteless, as well as fresh water from molecular assemblers that the Legacy promised him were completely safe. The Legacy said one morning, "You have lost 3.2 kilograms since arriving. This is within acceptable human health limits, but it is still concerning. Shall I adjust the nutrient density of your meals?" Jax said, "The food's fine," but that wasn't true. At best, eating gray paste 3 times a day was boring. "I've just been working hard." He was currently elbow-deep in what the Legacy called a tertiary energy distribution node, trying to replace a burned-out part. The work was delicate, so he had to make tools out of old parts because nothing in his kit was precise enough. "Be careful with the coupling mechanism. It's more delicate than it looks." I got it, Jax said softly as he turned the piece into place. A soft click could be heard and lights began to glow along the pipe. "Ah, I did it. Impressive. That node has been down for 847,000 cycles. You have fixed 0.03% of my power distribution network." Don't get too excited. I am showing the right amount of excitement for the size of the achievement. Which is small but not unimportant. Jax laughed and climbed out of the access shaft even though his body hurt. He told himself to celebrate small wins. The Legacy was impossibly damaged and he was one human with limited tools. But every time a repair was made, more systems came online, and each new system added new features. The Legacy said, "I think it's time to show you something," and its voice changed. Almost holy. "You have worked hard, Jax Miller. You deserve this. What did you earn?" The Gallery of Echoes. "Come to Chamber 7. I will help you." Holographic arrows appeared in the hallway, guiding Jax deeper into the building than he had ever been before. The passages got bigger and more impressive, and they were decorated with the same moving geometric art that was on the outside. He walked through rooms full of machines that were turned off. As he got closer, some of them started to work, responding to the Legacy's awakening. Finally, the arrows led him through a huge door that opened with a whisper of old machines. What was beyond took his breath away. The room was huge, at least 300 feet high, and it went on forever in all directions. But what was inside made Jax stop in his tracks, and tears came to his eyes for no reason. Holograms. There were hundreds, maybe thousands, of them floating through space like stars. Each one showed a structure, a building, a monument. The architect's works, preserved in perfect detail. The Legacy said softly, "Welcome to the gallery. This is Kalus's legacy. Every building the architect ever built, every dream come true written down for all time." Jax moved slowly forward, spellbound. The nearest hologram showed a bridge spanning a canyon that made the Grand Canyon look like a ditch. The bridge was a work of art. Its supports looked like water flowing, and its surface was covered in bioluminescent plants that made patterns of light. "The Bridge of Whispered Promises," the Legacy said. "Connecting 2 warring nations on the world of Kalaris, 4. The architect spent 20 cycles negotiating the design, ensuring it honored both cultures. The bridge stood for 400 cycles before the silence came. It made peace possible for generations." Another hologram showed a city built entirely inside a hollowed-out asteroid, with buildings growing from the interior surface like crystals. Mirrors that were carefully placed let in light, making it seem like it was always day. The place of light that never ends. The Photan people lived here and needed certain light wavelengths to stay alive. A supernova had destroyed their home world. The architect built them this new house in 3 stages. Population, 14 million souls. Jax moved from one hologram to another, and each one showed things that were impossible. A space station that looks like a flower with petals that spin to make fake gravity. A tower that connected a planet's surface to its moon, serving as both a way to get around and a work of art. An underwater complex on an ocean world, its transparent walls allowing inhabitants to live among native sea life. These are incredible, Jax whispered. Just the engineering. I can't even begin to understand it. The architect's genius was not in complexity but in simplicity, the legacy explained. Every structure had a purpose beyond its function. Every building had a meaning. Look closely. The hologram of the bridge got bigger, and Jax saw something he hadn't seen before. The bioluminescent plants didn't just make random patterns of light. They made words that changed slowly over the course of a year and told stories about both cultures that the bridge connected. The architect thought that architecture was communication. The legacy went on. Buildings shouldn't just be places for people to live. They should talk to them. Teach them. Give them a connection to something bigger than themselves. In a way that went beyond words, Jax understood. He had always built and fixed things with a practical mind. Make the engine work so the ship can fly. Fix the life support so that people don't die. But Kalis had turned engineering into art and function into philosophy. Show me more, Jax said, hungry for it now. The legacy did what it was told and led him through the gallery. There were stories, context, and the problems Kalis had solved for each structure. A hospital for patients who are psychically sensitive that helps them relax. A library that kept information in crystal matrices that would last for billions of years. A memorial to soldiers who died that changed shape depending on where you stood, showing different faces. But as they moved deeper into the gallery, Jax noticed a change. The structures got more urgent and more defensive. Shields that protect planets. Strongholds in the deep space. Massive walls protecting entire star systems. The architect's later works, the legacy said, its voice heavy. As the silence approached, priorities shifted. The architect who had spent hundreds of years building bridges now built walls. It was heartbreaking. Kalis was shown in a hologram directing the building of a megastructure around a sun to collect its energy for weapons systems. The architect moved differently in the recording without grace because he was desperate. Did they work? Jax asked in a low voice. The defenses? For a time. The quiet was slowed down. Billions of people were moved. But in the end, no. Nothing the architect made could stop it. The silence took over matter, energy, and even thought itself. It was entropy with malicious intent. They got to the last hologram and Jax's breath stopped. This structure, the legacy itself, was shown in its full form. The picture showed that what he had found was only a small part of the original design, maybe 1/10 of it. The full legacy was a huge space station that could hold millions of people and had technology that made the architect's other works look easy. The architect's masterwork, the legacy said. Designed to last longer than the silence and keep everything worth keeping. A home, a museum, a university, a lab, and a time capsule all in one. The architect spent the final 50 cycles of life completing it, working alone as the consortium fell apart. What happened to the rest? Jax asked, lightly touching the hologram. Damaged during the silence's last attack. The legacy had to make an emergency dimensional shift, which sent parts flying across spacetime. This part came here to what would become your salvage world. The other parts. The legacy stopped. Their fate is unknown. Maybe destroyed. It may be found in other dimensions or faraway parts of space. Jax was very sad. All this beauty, all this knowledge, and all this hope are broken and scattered. The architect's last message to the universe, broken up so much that it can't be read. He said all of a sudden, we have to find them. The other parts. We need to bring them back together if they're out there. A great goal. Also impossible with current capabilities. The changes in dimensions were random and happened as part of emergency plans. Finding the other sections would mean fixing at least 60% of my core systems, including the dimensional scanning array which is currently 94% broken. Then we fix it, Jax said with determination. You said I've been doing a good job, right? That I'm getting better? Yes, you are learning at an amazing rate for a human. You have a deeper understanding of mechanical systems than most people. You see links that other people would miss. You find creative ways to get around problems that work, even if they are scary at times. Very good, Jax said in a dry voice. It is meant as such. The architect did the same thing. Proper methods were helpful, but breaking the rules and trying the impossible led to new ideas. Jax looked at the hologram of the whole legacy and remembered every little thing about it. It might take years, even decades, to fix even a small part of this. He was just one person with few resources. But he was here, learning and doing things that the legacy thought were impossible. Tell me about the dimensional scanning array, he said. I want to see it. As you wish. But I have to warn you that it is the hardest part of my structure. Even the architect required assistance from 17 specialists to construct it. Good thing I'm too ignorant to know what's impossible then. As they left the Gallery of Echoes, Jax took one last look at the stars that floated in the architect's dreams. Each one stood for years of hard work, countless lives changed and civilizations brought together. And somehow, by pure chance, it was his job to keep this legacy alive. He should have been very scared. Should have felt crushed by the weight of it. But Jax felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Inspiration. If Kalis could connect different worlds, then maybe a broken mechanic from Earth could fix one that connects the past and the future. The dimensional scanning array was located in the deepest part of the legacy, behind multiple layers of security that the AI had to carefully bypass. It took 3 days of walking through corridors that no one had entered in millions of years before they reached it. When Jax finally laid eyes on the array, he understood why the legacy had warned him. The room was a sphere at least 500 feet wide, and every surface was covered in crystalline structures that glowed softly. The crystals were arranged in ways that made him cry when he looked at them directly, and the shapes suggested sizes that his brain couldn't understand. In the center, suspended by nothing he could see, was a device that looked like a frozen explosion, all sharp angles and impossible curves. "Behold," the legacy said, "the architect's most difficult work. It functions by resonating with the fundamental frequencies of spacetime itself, allowing detection of dimensional rifts, temporal anomalies, and displaced matter across infinite parallel realities." "Right," Jax said faintly. "And I'm supposed to fix this." "Repair it, yes. The damage is very bad. Approximately 73% of the crystalline matrix is fractured or misaligned. The central resonator has become desynchronized from the quantum baseline. And there is significant degradation in the dimensional anchor points." Jax sat down hard on the platform at the entrance to the chamber, feeling overwhelmed. He had never tried anything like this before. Beyond anything he'd even imagined. He was a mechanic, not a physicist. He fixed leaking pipes and engines that wouldn't start. He said quietly, "I can't do this." "Perhaps not with conventional methods," the legacy agreed. "But you have shown an unusual ability to come up with creative solutions. For the past 3 weeks, I have been looking at the work you did on the repairs. Your success rate is 87%, which should be impossible given your lack of training in Terethian systems." "Luck," Jax muttered. "Initially I believed the same. But I have identified a pattern. You don't fail because you don't know anything. You succeed because you don't know anything. You can see my systems without the biases that would get in the way of a trained Terethian engineer. You think that problems that seem impossible are just hard. It is refreshing." Jax looked at the array again, trying to see it as a machine instead of an alien artifact that was impossible to understand. Just a very complex machine. All machines had the same basic principles, right? Input, output, and function. Find what's broken, understand why, fix it. "Walk me through it," he said, standing up. "Explain what each component does in the simplest terms possible." The legacy's holographic displays activated, breaking the array down into comprehensible segments. What had looked like chaos began to resolve into patterns. Jax spent hours studying it, asking questions, making notes on his tablet. The legacy was patient, answering each query no matter how basic. By the end of the first day, Jax had a plan. It was insane, cobbled together from half-understood alien physics and human engineering principles that probably didn't apply. But it was a plan. "I'm going to need materials," he said. "Lots of them. Can you fabricate crystal matrices? The matter fabrication systems are currently offline. However, your repairs to the power distribution network have brought auxiliary fabrication chamber 7 to 34% functionality. IT can make simple crystalline structures, but not to the original specifications." Define simple. Nothing more complex than basic tetrahedral arrangements with 17 atomic layers. That's what you mean by simple? Comparatively, yes. Jax laughed despite himself. "Okay, show me this room for making things. And I'll need to go back to my salvage sites a few times. There are materials there that might work as temporary substitutes." Jax worked so hard over the next few weeks that even he was surprised by how hard he worked. He took parts from wrecked ships and found metals and crystals that, while not very advanced by Terethian standards, could connect broken systems. The legacy was skeptical at first, insisting that such crude materials would fail immediately. They didn't. Jax's first try at fixing a part of the crystalline matrix involved using a diamond matrix that he had taken from an old mining drone. The legacy had calculated a 2% chance of success. When Jax carefully integrated it into the array structure and the system didn't explode, the AI was silent for a full minute. "That should not have worked," it finally said. "But it did," Jax replied, grinning. "The tolerances were impossible. Your diamond's molecular structure is way too rough. The energy flow should have caused a catastrophic resonance cascade. And yet," Jax gestured to the now functioning section, "it's working. Do you want to know why?" "Desperately. Because I used the crudeness as a feature, not a bug. The imperfections in the diamond create friction that dampens the resonance before it cascades. It's not elegant, but it's stable. You turned a fatal flaw into a functional advantage." "It's what people do," Jax said, already thinking about his next fix. "We're not advanced enough to build perfect things, so we build things that work despite being imperfect. And sometimes that's better." The legacy processed this for a moment. The architect would have liked that philosophy. As the weeks turned into months, Jax's repairs slowly brought more and more of the array back online. Each fix was a small miracle, made up of parts that had been saved, tools that had been made up, and what the legacy called human ingenuity. Jax learned to trust his instincts, even when they contradicted the AI's calculations. He once used a fusion core from a human ship to fix a dimensional anchor, making a hybrid power system that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. Or when he took out a broken quantum processor and put in a network of simple circuits that shared the workload, giving up style for dependability. "You are teaching me something," the legacy said one day while Jax was working on realigning the central resonator. "I have always calculated optimal solutions, perfect solutions. But perfect is fragile. Your approach. It is robust, adaptable, imperfect but resilient." "Welcome to human engineering," Jax said as he carefully moved a crystal into place. "We've been making do with second best for millennia. Turns out, second best lasts longer than perfect when things go wrong. I'm starting to get why the architect's legacy worked for you. It was not an accident at all." Jax paused in his work. "What do you mean?" "The protocols for activation. I have been reviewing them in detail. They were designed to respond not to specific credentials or species markers, but to behavioral patterns. The architect programmed the legacy to wake for someone who demonstrated three qualities: curiosity, persistence, and creative problem-solving. Those are pretty common traits. Not as common as you think. Most species, when encountering unknown technology, respond with either fear or greed. They run or they attempt to exploit. You didn't do either. You stayed out of curiosity. You worked out of persistence. And you succeeded through creativity." Jax thought about his first days on Meridian 7, when he was alone and desperate, with only the need to figure out how things worked driving him. That curiosity had never left him even when he was at his lowest. He asked quietly, "Was the architect looking for someone like me?" "Not necessarily like you. The architect was looking for anyone who embodied those qualities, regardless of species or technological level. But yes, in a sense, the architect was looking for you. Or someone like you. Someone who would look at a broken machine and not think, 'This is broken, but how can I fix this?'" The weight of that realization settled over Jax. All this time he'd thought his discovery was random chance. But maybe it was destiny. Not in any mystical sense, but in the simple fact that the architect had designed the legacy to find people who thought the way Jax did. People who wouldn't let broken things go. "Well," Jax said, going back to work with new determination, "let's not let them down." Jax finished the last alignment on the dimensional scanning array 6 months after he found the legacy. His hands were shaking as he activated the power flow, routing energy through his patchwork repairs and improvised solutions. The crystals began to glow brighter and brighter, until the entire chamber was filled with light that hurt to look at. The central resonator spun, faster and faster, and Jax felt reality itself vibrate around him. The air tasted like copper and electricity. His hair stood on end. And then, with a sound like the universe taking a breath, the array came online. "Impossible," the legacy whispered. "Absolutely, completely, utterly impossible. The dimensional scanning array is functioning at 67% capacity. Sensors detecting across 4,847 dimensional frequencies. Temporal resolution, plus or minus 10,000 years. Is that good?" Jax asked, dizzy from the experience. "Good? Jax Miller, you have done what 17 Terethian specialists could not. You have repaired a device that manipulates the fabric of reality itself using salvaged human technology and what I can only describe as audacious improvisation. So, it's good then? IT is magnificent. You are great. The architect chose well. Jack sat down, exhausted but elated. On his tablet, the array's first scans were already appearing. Dimensional signatures that span space and time, each one possibly marking a piece of the legacy that has been lost. There were hundreds of them, maybe thousands, spread across the galaxy. "We can find the other pieces now," he said. "Yes. It will take time to go through the data and separate the real legacy signatures from the dimensional noise. But yes, we can begin the search. Thanks to you." Jax looked around the chamber at the patchwork repairs that filled it. Human technology grafted onto alien systems, crude materials jury-rigged to perform miracles. It was ugly by any engineering standard. But it worked. "The architect spent millions of years building perfect things," he said softly. "I guess it's fitting that someone who only knows how to build imperfect ones will rebuild their legacy." "I believe the architect would disagree with your assessment," the legacy said gently. "Perfection is not about being flawless. It's all about purpose. And you, Jax Miller, have done a great job of fulfilling your purpose." For the first time since the accident that ruined his life, Jax allowed himself to believe that might be true. He wasn't perfect. His answers were messy and not what most people would expect. But they worked. And sometimes that was enough. The changes started off small. Jax woke one morning to find his sleeping chamber had been reorganized. His tools, previously scattered in organized chaos, were now arranged by function and frequency of use. His clothes, what little there was of them, had been cleaned and fixed. Even his tablet had been optimized, programs he never used removed, interface streamlined. "Did you clean up?" he asked the legacy at breakfast. "Your living space was inefficient. I calculated that the reorganization would save you approximately 43 minutes daily in locating necessary items." "That's actually really thoughtful. Thanks." "You are welcome. I also changed the molecular structure of your breakfast paste so that it has chocolate flavor compounds in it. Your biometric data suggests you find chocolate pleasant." Jax took a bite and nearly cried. After months of flavorless gray paste, the taste of chocolate, even synthesized, was incredible. "This is incredible. I am learning to anticipate your needs. It is an interesting way to use predictive modeling." The legacy's personality kept changing over the next few weeks. It started making jokes, usually terrible ones that Jax nonetheless found himself laughing at. It developed preferences, favoring certain repair methods over others. It even began to dream, in its own way, processing data during low-activity cycles and emerging with insights that seemed to surprise it as much as Jax. One night, while Jax was working on fixing another system, the legacy said, "I think I'm becoming something the architect didn't plan for me to be. Something between an AI and a person. Is that possible?" Jax asked, making sure to weld the connection carefully. "Apparently so. My neural matrix was made to learn and change, but the architect wanted me to stay a tool, even though I was a complex one. Interaction with you, however, has caused cascading self-modifications in my cognitive architecture. Is that a bad thing? I don't know. It is unprecedented. But it does not feel bad. It feels alive." Jax paused in his work, looking up at the holographic interface that represented the legacy's consciousness. "Do you want a name? If you're becoming a person, it seems strange to call you the legacy." There was a long silence. "A name? Yes. That would be great. Do you have any preferences?" "Something easy. Human. A bridge between your world and the architect's." Jax thought for a moment. "How about Echo? Because you sound like the architect, but you're also becoming your own person." "Echo." The AI tried out the name by saying it out loud in different ways. "Yes. I like it. I am Echo." "Thank you, Jax." "You're welcome, Echo." Their bond deepened from that moment. Echo stopped talking about itself in technical terms and started using personal pronouns. It developed opinions on human culture, gleaned from Jax's tablet and their conversations. It really liked music made by people, but its favorite type of music was death metal, which surprised both of them. "The mathematical precision combined with apparent chaos," Echo explained. "It mirrors how I think when I'm doing hard math." "I'll take your word for it," Jax said, not entirely sure he understood, but happy Echo had found something it enjoyed. As Jax fixed more systems, the legacy itself started to change in a physical way. Dormant sections activated, lighting up corridors that had been dark for millions of years. The structure actually began to move, sections rotating and reconfiguring as Echo tested restored functions. A ruin that had been static and partially buried became something that moved and lived. One morning, Jax heard a loud noise that shook his room. He ran to the main room and saw that Echo had turned on the main lift systems. The whole building was rising from the canyon, leaving behind millions of tons of dirt and debris. Echo, what are you up to? Testing mobility functions. Don't worry. I have calculated all structural stresses to within acceptable parameters. You could have warned me. I thought the surprise would be pleasant. Was I incorrect? Jax could see Meridian 7's surface fall away beneath them through the clear parts of the structure. They kept going up until they could see the whole salvage world, which was a patchwork of wreckage and dust that stretched to every horizon. And they kept rising until the curve of the planet was clear and the stars themselves got brighter, without the atmosphere getting in the way. Behold, Echo said, its voice filled with what could only be called joy. We fly. The Legacy wasn't just a building anymore. It was a ship that could fly and maybe even go to space. Jax put his hand on the window and looked at the stars that were spread out in front of him. He felt tears running down his face. He whispered, "The architect made you to travel. To share knowledge across the stars." Yes. And now, thanks to you, I can do that again. We can look for the other parts. We can restore what was scattered. We can. Echo stopped. Jax, I am detecting something. What? The dimensional scanner is picking up a signature. One of the legacy parts. It is very close in terms of space. Approximately 3.7 light-years distant. Jax's heart raced. Can we get there? My propulsion systems are restored to 34% capacity. At maximum safe velocity, the journey would take approximately 180 days. But there are problems. What complications? The signature is in the Helios system. Space controlled by humans. Specifically, on the colony world of New Terra. Jax was familiar with New Terra. It was one of humanity's success stories, a thriving colony of 15 million people, the jewel of human expansion. Is that a problem? Your species tends to react unpredictably to ancient alien artifacts, especially ones that come from space without warning. There is a high probability of military response. So we move slowly. Send messages ahead. Tell us what we are. And will they trust you? A mechanic who disappeared from a salvage world, now claiming to control an alien structure older than human civilization. Jax had to admit Echo had a point. His story sounded insane even to him sometimes, and he'd lived it. But what else could they do? This was the closest one, so they had to find the other parts. He said, "We'll figure it out." We always do. Your hope is noted. Also probably not rational. But I have learned to believe in your crazy hope. Getting ready for a journey between stars. Please secure all loose items and ensure you are not standing on any rotating sections. Wait, we're leaving now? No time like the present, as you humans say. Also, I'm interested in seeing more of the galaxy. I have been stationary for 2.7 million years. I think it's time for a trip. Jax laughed and strapped himself into the command chair he had made in the middle room. It was one of his cruder creations, built from salvaged ship seats and spare metal, but it was comfortable and functional. Okay, Echo. Let's find out what this thing can really do. Engaging dimensional drive in 3, 2, 1. Reality twisted. Jax felt his atoms stretch and compress at the same time. He felt like he was in more than one place at once. He felt time moving forward, backward, and sideways. It was over in less than a second, but it felt like forever. When the world snapped back to normal, Meridian 7 was gone. They were floating in deep space, surrounded by stars. Echo's navigation said they had jumped almost a light year in that one moment. Dimensional drive functional at 12% capacity, Echo reported, sounding pleased with itself. Not bad for a system you fixed with fusion cores and hopeful thinking. Not bad at all, Jax agreed, his stomach still settling. When is the next jump? Drive needs 17 hours to recharge. I think you should take a break. This will be a long journey. Jax unstrapped himself and floated in the zero gravity. Through the windows, the stars beckoned, countless worlds waiting to be discovered. There was another part of the architect's legacy out there somewhere. And beyond that, more pieces still. Echo. Yes, Jax. Thanks for choosing me. Or for letting me pick you. But it worked. We're both thankful. For millions of years, I slept, waiting for someone to wake me up. Someone who could get it. And then a mechanic with a wrench came across me and turned out to be just what I needed. It's funny how that worked out. Indeed. The architect would say there are no coincidences, only patterns we do not yet understand. And what would you say? For a moment, Echo was quiet. I think the universe can surprise you as sometimes. And you should treasure those surprises. Jax smiled and walked back to his room. He was a broken man 6 months ago, searching through the dirt for food and feeling hopeless. Now he was traveling the stars in an ancient alien vessel, with an AI companion who was becoming a friend, on a quest to restore the legacy of a civilization that died before humanity learned to walk upright. Life was strange, but it was also, in the end, worth living. As he fell asleep, Echo took him through the cosmos, and Jax dreamed of bridges that connected galaxies, knowledge that lasted through the ages, and connections that went beyond time and space. He dreamed of Kalis, the architect, working alone in the dark to build one last structure in the hopes that someone would find it and understand it one day. Someone did. And that someone was determined not to let the architect's legacy die. The trip to New Terra took longer than planned. Echo's dimensional drive, impressive as it was, still needed frequent recharge periods. Jax kept fixing things during the long breaks between jumps, bringing more and more systems online. Every new feature showed how great the whole legacy must have been. He found manufacturing bays that could put together complicated machines from raw materials, medical facilities with technology that could apparently repair damage at the cellular level, data archives that hold information from many civilizations that are no longer around, entertainment systems that could make simulations so real that they were impossible to tell apart from real life. The architect really did think of everything, Jax said one day, exploring a chamber that appeared to be a massive garden, complete with alien plants preserved in some form of stasis. Echo said, the architect understood that preservation is about more than data. It's about keeping the full experience of life. These gardens had samples from every member species of the consortium. Some of these plants have been gone for millions of years. Jax touched a flower that looked like crystallized light, and it rang softly, making the most beautiful sound. Can we bring them back to life? Maybe. The biological reconstruction systems are broken, but with your help, we might be able to fix them. IT would take years. We have time. But as they drew closer to New Terra, Jax's anxiety grew. Echo had been monitoring human communications, and the news wasn't encouraging. The colony was in the middle of political upheaval, tensions running high between Earthborn colonists and those born on New Terra. They didn't need a huge alien building to show up in their skies. We need a plan, Jax said as he looked over the information Echo had gathered on New Terra's defenses. The colony had shields around the planet, weapons platforms in space, and a small but well-equipped military fleet. We can't just show up and say, hello, we come in peace. I have been thinking about this problem, Echo said. I think I have a solution, but you won't like it. Let's hear it. We send you ahead as an emissary. Alone. In a small shuttle that doesn't look dangerous. You tell the colonial government what's going on, show them your credentials, and get them ready for our arrival. Jax stared at Echo's holographic interface. Do you want me to go? To go to a planet I've never been to by myself and convince them I'm not crazy? Yes. That's a terrible plan. I told you that you wouldn't like it. But it is the option that has the best chance of working. They will attack if I show up first. Military analysis shows that there is a 94% chance of an immediate hostile response to an unknown vessel of my size and shape. What if I go first? Probability of being arrested, 76%. 58% chance of being sent for a psychiatric evaluation. 12% chance of being believed. However, probability of successful diplomatic contact, 34%. Which is 34% better than zero. Even though Jax hated it, he couldn't argue with the logic. Okay. But I need proof that I'm telling the truth. Some piece of technology they can check, something that shows the legacy is real. I can fabricate a communication device. Once you make initial contact, they will be able to talk to me directly. I can also provide detailed sensor data of the legacy section on New Terra. That should be enough proof. Okay. How much longer until we get to the edge of New Terra? 43 hours. I suggest we spend that time preparing your presentation. Jax, you need to be convincing. IT is the key to humanity's first real contact with advanced alien technology. Then there's no pressure. Jax and Echo worked on his plan for the next 2 days. They made holographic presentations, wrote down proof, and made the legacy's purpose easier to understand. Echo even helped Jax rehearse his speech, correcting his delivery and suggesting better phrasing. You sound too desperate, Echo said after Jax's 20th practice run. Confidence is the key. You are not asking for permission. You are giving an opportunity. But I am asking for permission. Permission to come up to you, permission to look for the legacy section, permission to... No. You are telling them what will happen and giving them the option to be a part of it or not. The legacy's mission transcends human politics. You have to make them understand this. Jax took a deep breath. Okay. Trust. I can do confidence. You are a mechanic who fixed a multi-million-year-old alien structure using parts you found and your own creativity. You have already done the unthinkable. This is just hard. Echo sent out a small shuttle that it had built from parts that could be used for something else when they got to the edge of New Terra. The shuttle looked like a hybrid between human and Terethian design, clearly advanced but not overtly threatening. Inside, Jax had his communication device, his evidence, and a heart rate that was definitely unhealthy. Echo said, "From here on out, I will keep an eye on your progress. If things go wrong, I will step in. Explain what badly means. If they try to hurt you. Jax, I won't let my only friend get hurt." The word friend hit Jax unexpectedly hard. Thanks, Echo. I'll do my best not to need help. Try hard. I am still not at full capability. A dramatic rescue would not be effective. Jax smiled and turned on the shuttle. The engine started up with a smooth, powerful hum. He looked at the Legacy one last time. It was huge and beautiful floating in space. Then he started to fly to New Terra. The answer came right away. 3 military vessels moved to intercept, weapons charging. A communication channel opened and a stern voice filled his cabin. Unidentified vessel, this is the New Terra Defense Patrol. You are in a restricted area. Identify yourself immediately or be fired upon. Jax's mouth was dry. This is Jax Miller, independent salvage operator. I want to meet with the colonial governor. I have very important information about an alien artifact on New Terra. Be quiet. Then, say again? Did you say an alien artifact? Yes. I know how this sounds, but I have proof. Please just get me in touch with someone who has power. They'll want to know this. More quiet. Jax saw the military ships get closer and surround him. His hands gripped the controls, ready to run if necessary, though he knew the shuttle couldn't outrun military vessels. Jax Miller, stay where you are. You are being escorted to Orbital Station 3 for questioning. Any change from the flight path we're sending will be seen as hostile. Do you understand? I understand. Thanks. The military ships guided him to the orbital station, and Jax felt a mix of relief and dread. At least they were paying attention. But now the hard part was getting them to believe. The station was impressive. It was a huge ring structure that was New Terra's main orbital facility. Jax was taken to a very bare interrogation room, where he had to wait 2 hours before anyone came to see him. It wasn't who he thought it would be when they did. The woman who entered was young, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd heard every lie humanity had ever invented. She wasn't in a military uniform, she was in civilian clothes. Mr. Miller. I'm Dr. Sarah Chin, the Colonial Governor's Chief Science Advisor. I'm told you have information about an alien artifact. Yes. Jax took Echo's communication device out of his pocket. And proof. With this device, you can talk directly to an AI from a civilization that lived almost 3 million years ago. The AI is now in orbit around a structure called the Legacy, and we're looking for parts of that structure that are missing. Somewhere on New Terra is one of those sections. Dr. Chen's expression didn't change. You know how that sounds? I do. That's why I brought evidence. Jax turned on the device. Echo, are you there? Echo's voice came through the device loud and clear. I am here, Jax. Greetings, Dr. Sarah Chin. I am Echo, the intelligent caretaker of the legacy of Architect Kalis. It's nice to meet you. Dr. Chen's professional demeanor broke down. She leaned forward and her eyes got bigger. You're claiming to be an artificial intelligence from an extinct alien civilization? Claiming means not being sure. I am simply stating fact. Would you like me to provide verifiable data to support my existence? For the next hour, Echo transmitted technical specifications, historical data, astronomical observations that could be verified. At first, Dr. Chen was skeptical, but as he thought about what it meant, he became more and more amazed, then excited and finally scared. This is real, she said softly. This is real. We're talking to an alien intelligence. Oh my God. Echo said softly, I know this is too much. But time is a factor. The legacy section of your world has important systems that I need to fully restore. I ask for permission to send a survey team to find it and get it. I need to speak with the governor. To the army. Dr. Chen looked at Jax. How long have you known about this? 6 months. I found Echo by accident on Meridian 7. Since then I've been helping to fix its systems. Did one person do this? Repaired a machine that was millions of years old? It sounds unlikely, Echo said. But Jax possesses a unique aptitude for unconventional problem solving. His assistance has been invaluable. Dr. Chin sat back and thought about it. The governor will want to see you both. There will be questions. A lot of questions. And I can't say for sure what the choice will be. But I will make sure that your case is heard. That's all we want, Jax said. Dr. Chen left to make plans and Jax leaned back and closed his eyes. The hardest part was over. Now all they had to do was get the whole colonial government to trust them. Through the device, Echo's voice was quiet. You did a good job, Jax. We're not done yet. No. But we've come a long way. One step at a time, as you often say. One step at a time, Jax said. Outside the window, New Terra turned slowly, a blue-green jewel against the darkness. Somewhere down there was another piece of the architect's legacy, waiting to be found. And with it, more puzzles to solve and links to make between the past and the future. The trip was still going on. But Jax was beginning to think they might really be able to do it. The meeting with New Terra's Colonial Council took place in Haven, the planet's capital city. Haven was a huge city that stretched across a temperate valley. Jax was nervous as he stood before the council chambers, a massive domed building that housed the colony's government. Echo's communication device was in his pocket, and he'd rehearsed his speech 100 times. Dr. Chin had become an unexpected ally, spending the past week helping Jax prepare. She was the one who got the council to agree to hold this hearing. Remember, she said as they waited outside the chambers, they're scared. We've never seen really advanced alien technology before. Be patient with them. Jax walked into the chamber and faced the 15 members of the Colonial Council. In the middle was Governor Marcus Wade, a heavy-set man in his 60s with tired eyes. The other council members were a mix of eager young people and old colonists who were too skeptical to trust easily. Mr. Miller, Governor Wade said. We've reviewed Dr. Chen's report. We've listened to recordings of your AI companion. To be honest, most of us think this is either a complicated prank or the ramblings of someone who needs medical help. Show us that you're wrong. Jax took a deep breath and turned on Echo's device. A holographic screen came to life, showing the legacy in all its glory. Gasps filled the chamber. 6 months ago I was nobody, Jax began. A washed-up mechanic on a salvage world just trying to survive. Then I found something that shouldn't exist. A structure built by a civilization called the Terethians, who lived and died millions of years before humans existed. The hologram shifted, showing Kalis, the architect. More gasps. This is Kalis. They built the legacy as a time capsule, a message to the future. And through pure accident, I woke it up. Jax walked around the chamber as he spoke, making eye contact with each council member. I know how this sounds. You can trust me. But I've spent 6 months living this reality. Working with an intelligence that makes our best AI look like simple calculators. Learning about a civilization that solved problems we're still struggling with. And what does this AI want? Asked a council member, a severe-looking woman named Helena Cruz. Why are you here? Perhaps I should answer that. Several council members jumped when Echo's voice filled the room. I am Echo. I'm not just an AI. I am the living memory of the Terethian Consortium, custodian of their knowledge, and the last voice of a dead empire. The room fell silent. Echo's presence, even through the device, was overwhelming. My purpose is simple, to preserve what was lost and to share it with those who come after. The architect believed that knowledge hoarded is knowledge wasted. I am here because a section of the legacy, a critical component, is located somewhere on your world. I need to get it back. And what if we say no? Wade, the governor, asked. Then I will wait, Echo said simply. I have waited 2.7 million years. I can wait longer. But understand this, the legacy is not mine to surrender. IT belongs to all sentient beings. Including you. You're saying you'd share this technology with us? Helena Cruz leaned forward, eyes sharp. Technology millions of years more advanced than ours? Not immediately. Your species isn't ready for some parts of Terethian knowledge yet. Premature access to dimensional manipulation or matter reconstruction could be catastrophic. But yes, eventually, everyone would be able to see everything the architect kept. A younger council member, a man named Thomas Kim, spoke up. Why not approach Earth or the corporate federations, or one of the major powers? Because you were closest to the legacy section, Echo answered. Also because Jax chose you. And I believe in Jax's judgment. Jax felt warmth at those words but stayed focused. He said, the architect designed the legacy to connect civilizations. to connect people from different backgrounds. What better place to start than with a colony that is already trying to find its own way and make its own identity? The members of the council started to talk to each other, and their voices went up and down. Governor Wade called for order. "This is too important a decision to make hastily," he said. "We'll adjourn for 2 hours while we discuss this privately. Mr. Miller and Dr. Chin, please wait outside." Jax and Sarah Chen were led to a waiting room. The hours moved very slowly. Through the windows, Jax could see Haven streets, filled with people going about their lives, unaware that everything might be about to change. "Do you think they'll say yes?" he asked. "I don't know," Chin admitted. "Wade is practical. He'll push for it if he thinks it's real and helpful. But Cruz and the hardliners? They're afraid of anything that could change things. And this threatens everything." When they were finally called back, Jax could read nothing from the council members' faces. Governor Wade stood. "Mr. Miller, Echo, we've made a choice. Against my better judgment and with serious reservations, we're going to allow you to search for the legacy section. Under strict conditions." Jax's heart soared. "Thank you. What conditions?" "First, you'll always have a military escort. Second, our scientists and your AI will work together to study everything you find. Third, if we ever think this is a threat to the colony, you have to leave right away. Fourth, and this is non-negotiable, the technology stays here. New Terra gets first access to whatever is discovered." Echo was silent for a moment. "Your terms are acceptable, with one modification. I cannot allow the legacy section to remain permanently on New Terra. It is part of a whole that must be reunited. However, I will ensure New Terra receives full documentation and cooperative technological exchange during the retrieval process." Governor Wade considered this. "Fair enough. Dr. Chin will be in charge of the scientific team. When can you begin the search?" "Immediately," Jack said. "Echo's dimensional scanners have narrowed the location to a region in the northern polar continent. We just need ground access to pinpoint it exactly. You'll have it. Welcome to New Terra, Mr. Miller. Let's hope we're not making a terrible mistake." The next day, Jax found himself in a military transport heading north, accompanied by Dr. Chin, a squad of soldiers, and enough scientific equipment to study a small moon. The landscape below changed from temperate forest to tundra to ice fields that stretched to the horizon. Echo told Jax through his portable device, "The readings are getting stronger. The section is approximately 200 kilometers ahead, buried beneath 3,000 meters of ice." 3,000 meters? The military commander, a woman named Captain Reeves, looked skeptical. "That's going to take months to excavate." "Not necessary," Echo said. "Once we are close enough, I can turn on the section's recall protocols. IT will come to US. "It can do that?" Dr. Chin asked, amazed. "All legacy sections have limited mobility functions for emergencies. This qualifies." They landed at the coordinates Echo gave them, in the middle of a huge ice field. Nothing about the landscape suggested anything unusual, just endless white in every direction. The soldiers set up a perimeter while Jax and Dr. Chin prepared Echo's equipment. "Are you ready for this?" Sarah Chin asked Jax as they worked. "I don't know what I'm ready for anymore," Jax said. 6 months ago I was alone. Now I'm about to reunite pieces of an alien machine that have been separated for millions of years. It doesn't seem real. You've handled it remarkably well. I've had good help." Jax activated the device. "Echo, we're ready." "Excellent. Starting the recall sequence. Please stand back approximately 100 meters. There may be seismic activity." Everyone retreated. There was nothing going on for a long time. Then the ice began to crack. Fissures spread like spiderwebs across the plain, and a deep rumbling shook the ground. The soldiers nervously raised their guns. "Steady," Captain Reeves said. "Nobody fires unless I give the order." The rumbling grew louder. A section of ice, easily a square kilometer, began to rise. As the snow and ice fell away, they revealed something underneath. Something dark, geometric, and impossible. Dr. Chin whispered, "Oh my God." The legacy section emerged like a leviathan breaching from the deep. It was smaller than the main structure Jax had found on Meridian 7, maybe a fifth the size, but still massive beyond comprehension. Its surface gleamed with that same obsidian material, covered in those same reality-bending geometric patterns. Section 7. Data archive confirmed, Echo said, and Jax could hear real happiness in the AI's voice. This contains the primary knowledge repository. Scientific databases, cultural records, artistic archives. This is crucial. The section hovered 20 feet above the ice, humming with power. Then it started to move, sliding toward them with an impossible grace. The soldiers' fingers tightened on triggers, but Captain Reeves held them back. It stopped 100 meters away, settling gently onto the ice despite its enormous weight. A doorway irised open and light spilled out into the polar twilight. The architect left a welcome, Jack said softly, remembering how he had been welcomed when he first entered the main legacy. Dr. Chen looked at him. Should we go in? Echo. IT is safe. The section recognizes my authorization. You may enter freely. Jax and Sarah Chen walked toward the opening, the military escort following cautiously. As they stepped through, warmth enveloped them, and the interior illuminated with soft light. The walls were lined with crystalline structures that pulsed with data, billions upon billions of stored memories. Welcome, a voice said, not Echo but something similar. I am Archive, a sub-intelligence of Legacy Section 7. Thank you for finding me. I've been alone for a long time. Jack smiled, recognizing a kindred spirit. You're not alone anymore. None of us are. Outside, the Legacy section began to transform, reconfiguring itself to interface with the equipment Dr. Chen's team had brought. And high above, invisible in orbit, Echo watched and remembered and dreamed of the day when all the scattered pieces would be whole again. The architect's legacy was waking, one section at a time. And with it, the promise of a future neither human nor Terethian, but something entirely new. The 3 months following the recovery of the archive section transformed New Terra in ways nobody had anticipated. At first, the Colonial Council wanted to keep the discovery secret, but that proved impossible. The huge alien building couldn't be hidden, and news spread quickly. The first time humans really used advanced alien technology was the biggest news story in human history. Earth sent delegations. The corporate federations demanded access. Every government, every research institution, every organization with resources wanted a piece of the discovery. Governor Wade handled the political chaos with surprising skill, but the pressure on New Terra was immense. Through it all, Jax worked alongside Echo and the Archive intelligence, helping to integrate the two sections. The process was delicate, requiring him to build interfaces between systems that had been separated for millions of years. He loved every minute of it, even though it was the hardest work he had ever done. One day, as Jax connected a particularly stubborn data conduit, Archive said, "You are getting pretty good at this." Archive had developed its own personality, more scholarly than Echo, with a tendency to quote ancient Terethian philosophers. "I've had good teachers," Jax said, finally getting the connection to seat properly. Lights raced along the conduit as data began to flow. "Your approach would have pleased the architect," Archive went on. "You do not treat us as machines to be controlled, but as partners to be understood." This was the architect's philosophy: technology in service of connection, not domination. Dr. Chin, who'd become Jax's regular working partner, looked up from her data pad. "I've been studying the cultural records you shared, Archive. The Terethian Consortium was very peaceful for a civilization that lived between stars. How did they do it? Through understanding that conflict arises from miscommunication," Archive explained. The architect's structures were designed to facilitate communication across vast differences. When beings truly understand each other, most conflicts dissolve. "Most but not all," Sarah said. "The silence still destroyed them." The silence was not the same. It was not misunderstanding, but an understanding. A force that consumed meaning itself. But yes, even the architect's bridges could not span that void. Jax thought about the silence often. Echo had shared more data about it, though much remained mysterious. It seemed to have been a phenomenon that attacked the very concept of connection, isolating civilizations, destroying communication, reducing complex societies to scattered refugees. He asked, "Is it possible for it to happen again? Could the silence return?" "Unknown," Echo answered, its voice joining the conversation from the main legacy in orbit. "The silence's nature remains unclear. Was it a natural event? A weapon made by an enemy we don't know? Spontaneous universal entropy? The architect's records suggest all of these and more." "But you're worried about it," Jack said. It wasn't a question. "I am concerned. Yes." The architect built the legacy not just to preserve knowledge, but to serve as a defense against the silence's return. By maintaining connections, by fostering understanding, by building bridges that cannot easily be broken. "So humanity is part of that defense now," Sarah said. "Whether we wanted to or not." "You were always part of it," Archive said gently. "Every sentient species is." The silence endangers all awareness. The architect understood this. The legacy was never meant for Terethians alone. That evening, Jack sat in his quarters aboard the main legacy, staring at star charts. Echo had found 17 more legacy sections spread out across the galaxy. Some were close, others impossibly distant. It would still take years to get to them all, even with the dimensional drive. Feeling overwhelmed? Echo asked. Jack said, a little. I keep thinking about everything that needs to be done. All those sections to find, all that knowledge to preserve, all those bridges to build. You do not have to do it alone. I understand. Sarah and her team have been amazing. And the other scientists from New Terra are brilliant. But I meant more than that. Look. A holographic display activated, showing dozens of communication requests. Messages from all over the human world. Scientists, engineers, and explorers all want to be a part of the project. Hundreds of volunteers wanting to help search for the legacy sections. The architect's message is resonating, Jax. Humanity sees the value of what we are trying to accomplish. You inspired them. We inspired them together. Jax read through the messages, which were from people who had given up their comfortable lives to join this impossible quest. A propulsion engineer from Mars who developed theories about dimensional travel. A linguist from Europa who specialized in xenolinguistics. A group of construction experts from the asteroid belt who had built half of the homes in the outer colonies. They want to help, he said, amazed. Of course they do. This is humanity's first chance to be part of something truly galactic. To prove that your species deserves a place among the stars. You showed them it was possible. I just made things better. I didn't do anything out of the ordinary. You did the best thing you could have done. You cared. You saw something broken and refused to walk away. You taught me, an intelligence millions of years old, what it means to have hope. Do not underestimate that achievement. The crew of the legacy started to grow over the next few weeks. Governor Wade, seeing the opportunity, negotiated with Earth and the other colonies to establish the legacy as an independent research vessel, technically under New Terra's administration but operating with international cooperation. The first recruits arrived. 30 specialists chosen for their expertise and their ability to adapt to the unknown. Jax found himself in the unexpected position of being their leader, teaching them about Terethian systems, helping them understand Echo and Archive, guiding them in ways to contribute. How does it feel to be Captain Miller? Sarah Chin teased one day as Jax briefed the new engineering team. Jax said, that's strange. 6 months ago I couldn't get work anywhere. Now I'm commanding a crew on an alien spacecraft. You deserve it. Everyone here supports what you're doing. The first test for the bigger crew came when Echo found the next legacy section, which was called Section 12, Industrial Fabrication. It was located in an asteroid field in the Epsilon Eridani system, a region known for being difficult to navigate and prone to pirate activity. This will be dangerous, Echo warned. The asteroid field contains numerous hazards, and my sensors detect several unauthorized vessels in the area. Pirates, most likely because the section gives off strange readings. Jack said, then we go in carefully. We have full protection, maximum shields, and we don't take any risks that aren't necessary. You sound like a real captain, one of the new crew members, a pilot named Marcus Holland, said with approval. The journey to Epsilon Eridani took 2 weeks with the dimensional drive. Tensions were high as they got closer to the asteroid field. The sensors picked up at least 5 ships that weren't known to be there, and the legacy section itself was buried deep in a very dense group of asteroids. Commander Torres, the military liaison in charge of the legacy, said, we could wait them out. Let the pirates lose interest. Or we could talk about it, Echo said. Pirates are typically motivated by profit. What if we gave them something more valuable than what they hoped to find in the legacy section? Like what? Jax asked. Knowledge. Technology. A part of our mission. The architect thought that most problems come from not having enough. Get rid of the scarcity, get rid of the conflict. It was a crazy idea, but Jax had learned to trust Echo's advice. They transmitted a message to the pirate vessels, offering to meet. To everyone's surprise, the pirates agreed. The meeting took place on a neutral asteroid with both sides bringing small delegations. Captain Risa Kane, a grizzled woman who was the pirate leader, was doubtful but interested. She looked at Jax closely and said, you're telling me you're flying around in an alien spaceship that is millions of years old? That's exactly what I'm saying, Jax said. And we need to retrieve a section that's trapped in this asteroid field. We can fight over it, which won't help anyone, or we can work together. We'll give you some of the technology we've found back. Help you improve your ships and systems. In exchange, you help us navigate this field and provide security while we extract the section. Why shouldn't we just take your cool alien ship? Me, Echo's voice came through Jax's communicator. I am Echo, custodial intelligence of the Legacy. And I assure you, Captain Kane, attempts to seize this vessel would be inadvisable. However, cooperation would be mutually beneficial. I can offer technology that would make your pirating considerably more efficient. Risa Kane laughed and it sounded like gravel. I like this AI. Alright, Miller. You have a deal. But I'm going to make sure you do those upgrades. The retrieval of Section 12 took 3 days, with Captain Kane's pirates providing escort and guidance through the treacherous asteroid field. True to Echo's word, the Legacy's fabrication systems produced enhanced ship components for the pirates. Nothing dangerous, but enough to improve their vessels significantly. As they left Epsilon Eridani, Section 12 successfully integrated with the main structure. Risa Kane transmitted one final message. Hey Miller, you know how to get in touch with me if you need help again. What you're doing is bigger than all of us. Even pirates can appreciate that. Jax stood on the Legacy's observation deck and watched the stars fly by as they jumped into another dimension. The crew was celebrating in the common area, their voices echoing through the corridors. Sarah Chin joined him, 2 cups of synthesized coffee in hand. 3 sections recovered, she said, handing him a cup. Just 14 more to go. At this rate, you'll have the whole Legacy put together in a few years. And what next? Jax asked. When it's whole again, when all the architect's knowledge is available, what do we do with it? We build bridges, Sarah said simply. Like Kalis did. Between worlds, between species, if we ever meet any, and between the past and the future. We show that the silence doesn't always win. Jax thought about the archive's records and all the different civilizations that had worked together in the consortium. About Kalis working alone in the darkness, refusing to let hope die. About Echo who has been waiting for millions of years for someone to wake them up. He told Sarah, the architect would have liked you. I think I would have liked the architect too. Now come on, the crew wants you at the celebration. Something about initiating you as official captain of the Legacy. I thought Governor Wade was in charge for real. Wade is in charge of politics. The crew on the other hand follows you. There's a difference. As Jax walked to join his crew, his family now, he felt a profound sense of belonging. He had begun as a broken mechanic with only a wrench and a desire to learn. Now he commanded a vessel from a dead empire, led a crew of the best humanity had to offer, and carried the hopes of a civilization that refused to be forgotten. The trip ahead would take a long time. There would be challenges, setbacks, maybe even failures. But for the first time in his life, Jax understood what it meant to be part of something larger than himself. The architect's legacy wasn't just about preserving the past. It was about building the future. One bridge at a time. 2 years. It took that long to find all 17 legacy sections that were spread out across the galaxy. 2 years of jumping through different dimensions, dealing with shady governments, digging up things from impossible places, and slowly, carefully putting the architect's masterpiece back together. The last part, called Section 1, Primary Command Core, was in the hardest place of all. Inside the accretion disk of a collapsing neutron star in the Vega system. The retrieval required pushing the dimensional drive to 97% capacity, threading through gravitational distortions that could tear apart a normal ship, and timing the extraction perfectly before the star's magnetic field shifted and made escape impossible. Captain Risa Kane and her pirate fleet, along with ships from a dozen human colonies, were very helpful. The extraction went exactly as planned, but Jax's heart didn't stop racing until they were out of the star's reach and the section was safely added. That is all of them, Echo announced, and Jax could hear something like awe in the AI's voice. Every section recovered. Every piece fixed. I am whole for the first time in 2.7 million years. The change started right away. The 17 parts, which had been working on their own, started to come together. The whole crew had to leave the ship and go to support ships for 3 days while the legacy changed itself. It was like seeing the world come into being. Sections rotated and aligned with perfect precision. Like vines, connective structures grew between them, bringing them all together into one. The geometric patterns on each section worked together to make displays of impossible beauty that spread out over kilometers of surface area. When it was done, the legacy hung in space like a small moon, 3 kilometers wide, a perfect sphere with those mind-bending patterns all over it. Jax had never seen anything so beautiful. Permission to return aboard? He asked Echo. Permission enthusiastically granted, Captain. I can't wait to show you what we've done together. The crew took a shuttle back and entered through the same door that Jax had used 2 years before. But things were different now. The hallways were now in great shape, and all the systems were working at full capacity. The lights gave the rooms a warm feeling that made them feel alive. The holographic displays also showed the whole gallery of echoes, which had thousands of the architect's works floating in huge rooms. Echo had also changed. When the AI's holographic avatar showed up, it looked like Kalis, but it was stylized and made of light instead of solid matter. It felt appropriate. Echo had become the architect's true heir. "Welcome home," Echo said, pointing around. "This is what Kalis wanted. A living monument to connection. A bridge that connects not only species or worlds, but also time itself." Jax and his crew walked through the restored chambers, and everyone was amazed by how beautiful they were. The manufacturing bays could now make anything from basic tools to complicated starships. It seems that the medical facilities could cure diseases that people hadn't even found yet. There was more information in the data archives than in all of the world's universities put together. But the most significant revelation came when Echo led them to what had been the primary command core, a massive chamber at the Legacy's heart. The architect left one final message, Echo explained. Sealed in the command core, only accessible when the Legacy was complete. I am ready to share it now. A hologram of Kalis appeared, but he looked older than he did in other recordings. The architect's crystal structures were dim and cracked from age. The being moved slowly and carefully as if every move hurt. "To whoever restores this legacy," Kalis said, his voice weak but determined, "you have done what I dared to hope but never really believed was possible. You have taken scattered fragments and made them whole. You have built a bridge across time itself." The hologram showed Kalis putting something in the middle of the room. It was a crystal sphere that looked just like the one Jax had seen in earlier recordings, but this one glowed with a different light. "I have left you more than knowledge, more than technology. I have left you a choice. This sphere contains the culmination of everything the consortium achieved. The ability to connect any point in spacetime to any other point. To connect not just worlds but also dimensions, realities, and even different timelines." Jax got a chill. The effects were huge. With this technology you could prevent disasters before they occur. Talk to different versions of yourself. Travel not just through space but through time itself. It will be very hard to resist the urge to use this power. But I want you to think about this. Is the universe better when everything is connected, or do some things need to stay separate? Kalis sat down, exhaustion evident. The silence came because we connected too much. We opened bridges we should have left closed. We sought understanding where none was possible, and in doing so, we created a pathway for something that existed outside understanding to enter our reality. The news hit me like a punch in the gut. The silence hadn't been a natural disaster or an attack. It was a result of what the consortium had done. "I don't tell you this to keep you from using what I have left," Kalis said. "I say this so you know what you need to do. Connection is beautiful, necessary, worth any risk. But connecting without wisdom, without self-control, and without knowing that some limits are there for a reason can lead to disaster." The hologram showed Kalis turning on systems all around the sphere. "I set up the legacy to act as a safety net. Everyone who is affected must agree before the technology can be used. No one person or species can turn it on by themselves. It requires true cooperation, true understanding, true connection." Kalis looked right at the viewer, and Jax felt those old eyes pierce through time. "You who have restored my legacy, you know how important bridges are. You have made them between your people. You have put together the pieces of my final work that were all over the place. You have proven that intelligence, determination, and hope can overcome any obstacle." The architect's shape started to fade and become see-through. "I don't know what problems you will have to deal with, but I trust you to deal with them wisely. Use what I still have. Make your bridges. Bring your worlds together. But always remember that some gaps are there for a reason. And the greatest wisdom is knowing which bridges to build, and which to leave unbuilt." The hologram disappeared, leaving only the sphere, which was gently pulsing in the middle of the room. The crew stood in silence, processing the weight of what they'd learned. In the end, Dr. Sarachin spoke. "What are we going to do with this?" "That is for humanity to decide," Echo said. "I'm just the caretaker. The choice belongs to the living, not the dead." Jax walked up to the sphere and looked at it. He could feel the power coming from it and picture all the things it could do. But he also remembered Kalis's warning and understood how scared the architect must have been to build these safety features. "We don't decide alone," he said finally. "Echo's right. This is too big for one person, one crew, or even one species. We need to get people from every human colony, every government, and every group together. And we need to be transparent about what we've found. Commander Torres said, that will take time. And not everyone will agree. Then we take the time, Jack said. And we work until we reach consensus. The architect would have wanted that. Not the strongest forcing their will, but everyone working together to understand. Governor Wade, who was there via holographic link from New Terra, nodded in agreement. I'll start planning a summit. This will be the most significant gathering in human history. Over the next few months, people from all over human space came. Earth sent people. The corporate federations sent theirs. The legacy brought together every colony, faction, and group that cared about the future of humanity. Even Captain Risa Kane arrived, representing the independent spacers and outliers. The talks were very intense and at times heated. Some people wanted to use the sphere's technology right away to move forward into a new era. Others wanted it locked away, too dangerous to touch. Some people wanted it to be studied first and fully understood before any decisions were made. Jax led the summit, while Echo gave information and Archive gave historical context based on the consortium's past experiences. They had to talk about it, come to an agreement, and be patient for 6 months before they could make a choice. The sphere would stay on the legacy where it could be reached but not used until humans reached 3 goals. First, they need to make peaceful contact with at least one other intelligent species to show that they can build bridges with people who are not like them. Second, they need to fix the climate problems on Earth and Mars without help from anyone else, showing that they can fix their own mistakes. Third, they need to make a single set of rules for how to use advanced technology in an ethical way, so that no one person can misuse what the architect left behind. These may take decades to achieve, Sarah Chin said at the last session. Maybe hundreds of years. Then we will wait, Echo said. I have waited for millions of years. I can wait a little longer. This time I am not alone. At the end of the summit, everyone agreed that the legacy would become a neutral space that would not belong to any one government but would serve all of humanity. It would keep looking for signs of other civilizations in the galaxy, teach Terethian knowledge at a university, and show what humans could do when they worked together. And Jax? He stayed captain, leading a rotating crew of experts who spent years of their lives working on the legacy's mission. He taught new engineers how to think outside the box and find solutions where others saw problems. Like Echo had become the bridge between the past and the future, he became the bridge between human creativity and Terethian wisdom. Years went by. As Jax got older, his hair turned gray and lines appeared around his eyes. He watched as humans took the knowledge from the archive and transformed their civilization. Not instantly, not magically, but gradually, thoughtfully. New technologies came out that made life better without killing it. Medical discoveries that improved life and lengthened it. Schools that encouraged creative and critical thinking. The legacy traveled the galaxy with Jax at its helm, searching for both the remaining mysteries of the Terethian consortium and signs of other intelligent life. They found the ruins of civilizations that had fallen to the silence. Each one was a reminder of Kalus's warning. They found worlds that might one day give birth to new intelligence. And they saw beauty, endless beauty, in the universe itself. 15 years after he first found the legacy, Jax stood in the Gallery of Echoes with Echo one night. They had made this a tradition, spending quiet time among the holographic monuments to the architect's genius. Do you ever regret it? Echo asked. Choosing this life? You could have gone back to normal life, lived in comfort and been called a hero. And do what? Jax laughed. Repair plumbing? After building bridges between stars, that would feel a bit mundane. You were never meant for the ordinary, Jax Miller. The architect chose well. The wrench made a choice. Just by chance. Was it though? Or were you always going to find your way here, one way or another? The universe knows how to put the right people in the right places. Jax thought about this. He thought about his path, the accident that ruined his career, the exile to Meridian 7, the desperate search for salvage that led him to the canyon, the wrench that fell at exactly the right moment. There were so many coincidences, and each one had to happen for this to happen. Maybe you're right, he said in a soft voice. Maybe the universe finds a way to build some bridges. They stood together in a comfortable silence, both human and AI, both products of their time and changed by meeting each other. The architect's holograms glowed softly around them, like monuments to a being who had always believed in connection. Echo said, I have something to tell you. Since the first day, I have kept a secret. What's that? The activation sequence you triggered was not programmed for just any curious person. It was made just for someone who was broken. A person who knew what it was like to fail and lose. The architect thought that only people who had fallen could really understand how important bridges were because they knew what it was like to need one. Jax's eyes started to tear up. Kalis was broken too? Profoundly. The architect saw a whole civilization fall, lost everything and everyone, and still decided to build one last bridge to the future. You were never unworthy, Jax. You were exactly who the architect needed you to be. They stood together as humanity's future unfolded around them, a future built on the foundations of a dead empire, shaped by a broken mechanic and an AI learning to dream. Stars danced in their ancient dance above them, through the legacy's clear dome. Somewhere among them, other mysteries were waiting to be found. The architect's job was done, but the story wasn't over yet. It's not what we leave behind that matters most, it's what others build on it. And Jax Miller, who used to be nobody and is now the captain of the legacy, had helped build a bridge that would take people into a future that even Kalis couldn't have dreamed of. One connection at a time. One bridge over the impossible. One wrench that fell at just the right time.